Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video we're going to be looking at combining Divine Soul Sorcerer with the Life Domain Cleric. Now last week's video I took a kind of more of a deep dive on the Life Domain Cleric, and one of the things I mentioned is that Life Domain, in fact I've mentioned this in a bunch of videos, but the Life Domain is an excellent choice for like a small like 1 to 3 level dip. But I've never actually done a video where we did that, or at least not where we looked at it specifically. So I wanted to do that in today's video, and I think that Divine Soul Sorcerer is one of the best fits. Now, originally I had 3 different builds I was going to use, and it was going to be the theme where all of them were like majority of the other class, and we just took 1 to 3 levels of Life Domain. Problem is, I found that I just wasn't able to give any of the builds the kind of actual like attention I really wanted to, and in the end I thought it would just be better to make a separate video about each of the different builds. So that's probably what's going to be what ends up happening here. So if we look at though at the Life Domain, we're not going to look at any of the higher level abilities. We'll just look at the basic abilities because we're only looking at 1 to 3 levels. But that's okay because the low level abilities are perfect for what we're looking for. We're going to get bonus proficiency at level 1 of heavy armor. We're going to get Cycle of Life. Whenever you cast a spell at first level or higher to restore hit points to a creature, the creature regains additional hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. This is pretty handy as well, just make our heals go a little bit further and heal a little bit more. We're going to get the Channel Divinity at level 2 of Preserve Life. As an action, you can present your holy symbol and evoke healing energy that can restore a number of hit points equal to 5 times your cleric level. Choose any creatures within 30 feet of you, divide those hit points among them. This feature can restore a creature to no more than half its hit point maximum, and you can't use it on undead or constructs. So obviously, this ability, the pool is going to be very small because we don't have a lot of cleric levels. However, it's still a pretty useful ability because if you have multiple allies that all went down in a round, let's say they failed a saving throw against like an AoE spell or a breath weapon or something like that, with one action you can bring multiple people up into the combat and get them all back up on their feet again. And even if you're only healing them for a little bit, it's still pretty handy. The other nice thing about it is that the restriction of only being able to heal them up to their halfway point doesn't really matter that much because you're not healing for that much anyway. This is going to be more like just an emergency button where you're like, oh crap, 2 or 3 people all went down, let's get them back up again. And with one action, that's a pretty good use of that action. The other main advantage is going to be your domain spell list. So you get Bless, Cure Wounds, Lesser Restoration. So those are at level 1. Level 3, you get Lesser Restoration and Spiritual Weapon. And these are all excellent spells, right? Bless, Cure Wounds, those are probably ones you were going to take on a Divine Soul Sorcerer, because otherwise, why did you go Divine Soul Sorcerer if you didn't want to have at least a bit of healing and some cleric buffs, right? And one of the nice things about the Divine Soul Sorcerer, of course, is every time you level and you get new spells, you can choose to take those spells from the Sorcerer spell list or the Cleric spell list. So it essentially just doubles the amount of options you have. The problem is you're still a sorcerer, and sorcerers have such few spells known that doubling your options while still having very limited number of choices isn't as handy as it might have first appeared. But because some of these basic spells are going to count as domain spells and thus will be always prepared for you, it means you don't have to waste a bunch of spell slots, or spells known, choosing things like Bless. I don't know, not waste, but you know what I'm saying. You don't have to use a spell known on Bless because now it's always going to be there for you. You don't need Cure Wounds. It's always going to be there. If you took 3 levels of Life Cleric, you'll have Spiritual Weapon just always there. Lesser Restoration. Those are 4 excellent choices that I might have wanted to make as a Divine Soul Sorcerer. And now they're just always available. And then when I do use those spells to like cast healing and stuff, I'm going to get a little more mileage out of it too. And that's pretty good. The other thing is the heavy armor. So Sorcerer has a proficiency of Constitution, which of course means you're also proficient on concentration saving throws. So let's say you wanted to combine Sorcerer, but you wanted to get some heavy armor from somewhere. Now, if you started as a Sorcerer to get the Constitution saving throws and then decide to multi-class into Paladin, for example, you're not going to get heavy armor by multi-classing into Paladin. You only get medium armor. But by going into the Life Cleric it means that you're going to be able to get the heavy armor as a bonus proficiency, and you're still going to be able to start as a sorcerer and get the Constitution saving throws. So really, you've got the best of both worlds there. And it's a very, very nice option. Now, I mean, you could have gone fighter, for example, and started at fighter, had Constitution saving throws, and had heavy armor. But then it's also slowing down your spell progression. Whereas in this case, it's still a full caster. You're going to have all the casting slots that a full caster would have, and you're only really like one level behind, right? As far as getting that next level of spells. But you're still going to have the spell slots, and you can still upcast stuff, so it doesn't hurt as much. And overall, it ends up being a pretty powerful combination. Then on top of that, you've got all the other spells of the Divine Soul Sorcerer. So you've got Divine Magic, that's the one where you can choose Cleric or Sorcerer spells. But you also have, you choose an affinity, and you get these spells added to your spells known, and it doesn't count against your spells known list. But if you're good, you get Cure Wounds, Evil Inflict Wounds, Law Bless, Chaos Bane, Neutrality, Protection from Evil and Good. Pretty nice. I mean, some of those are already covered by your Cleric domain spell list, but let's say you went with Chaos. You could have Bane or something like that, and then you've already got Bless because you've got a life domain Cleric, and it's pretty handy. You also at first level get your Favor of the Gods. If you fail a saving throw or miss with an attack roll, you can add 2 die 4 and add it to the total, possibly changing the outcome. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long or short rest. But if you're wearing heavy armor and have a shield, for example, and then maybe you even have the shield spell, it means you're probably not going to have to worry too much about getting hit and losing concentration. It's really only if you get hit with a crit. Because the higher your armor class is, just shield starts becoming so much more effective, right? Like if you have 12 armor class and you cast shield, going up to a 17 is pretty handy. But if you've got like full plate and a shield, and you've got like 20 armor class, going to a 25, suddenly that window where the creatures can hit you starts becoming extremely small. And it means that you almost never get hit, and thus you're almost never having to worry about concentration. And then if you do, you still got Favored by the Gods you could use. And, you know, like I said, rarely will you be hit, and if you do get hit, it's probably on a crit. And then you're going to be taking a lot more damage, and Favored of the Gods is perfect then to help you make those saving throws. Level 6, you get Empowered Healing. Whenever you or an ally within 5 feet of you rolls dice to determine the number of hit points a spell restores, you can spend 1 sorcery point to re-roll any number of those dice once, provided you aren't incapacitated. You can use this feature only once per turn. But again, it's kind of feel that or fit in with that other feel of the class, which is just taking our healing spells and getting more out of them. Because I don't necessarily want to be playing like a dedicated heal bot necessarily. I mean, maybe you do, that's fine too. But I do still want to be able to have some heals. I just want to be able to get more mileage out of those heals and, you know, not have to use as many spells all the time. Level 14, you get Otherworldly Wings. You can use a bonus action to manifest a pair of spectral wings that appear from your back. You have a flying speed of 30 feet, and the wings last until you're incapacitated, die, or until you dismiss them as a bonus action. The affinity you chose with your Divine Magic feature determines the appearance of the spectral wings. Eagle wings for good or law, bat wings for evil or chaos, and dragonfly wings for neutrality. And then assuming you get all the way to 18th level sorcerer, so at most that would have given you 2 levels of cleric, but that's fine. Then you also gain the ability to overcome grievous injuries. As a bonus action, when you have fewer than half your hit points remaining, you can regain a maximum number of hit points equal to half your hit point maximum. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long or short rest. A long rest, not a short rest. It has to be a long rest. Not the best word, but basically if you're, wounded and you have less than half your hit points, you can regain up to half your hit points. Pretty handy. It's not going to benefit from your life domain stuff because it's not a spell you're using. But, the level 6 ability, Empowered Healing, does benefit from that. And in general, I just feel like it's a really, really strong combination. And part of it is because, look, if you're looking to play like a melee sorcerer type, you're probably better off just combining it with Paladin. Paladin Sorcerer multi-class is one of the strongest multi-classes in the game, in my opinion. But maybe you didn't want to play a melee guy. Maybe you're just like, I'm going to play a Sorcerer, but I'm just going to take one level of Life Domain Cleric. And that's going to give me heavy armor. It's going to give me a couple of decent prepared spells, right? Or like domain spells, you know, that I don't have to worry about them. They're just always going to be there for me anytime I need them. I just use a spell slot. It's not going to count against anything I've got. And some extra bonus healing on top. And I think that, like, honestly, I think a 19 Sorcerer 1 Life Cleric is going to be a lot stronger overall than a level 20 Sorcerer was. At least if you're leveling it all the way from 1 to 20. Because having heavy armor your entire career is just so advantageous. It also opens you up to a lot of different options. You know, maybe your campaign, you get like a robe of the Magi or something like that, right? In which case, you might not want to wear the heavy armor anymore. Who knows? But maybe you do get +3 plate mail, and that might be better. Or maybe you convince your DM to give you some sort of like arcane armor, which is like full plate mail, but it's inscribed as like mystical runes and stuff, and it counts as a, you know, Star of Robes, or Robe of the Eye, or Robe of Stars, or Robe of the Eyes, or even a Robe of the Magi, whatever. You know, I think there's some potential there. The other thing I really like about this kind of combination is that it really frees you up to play the game in different ways. You could decide to just, you know, be a pure caster, but wearing full plate mail. Nothing wrong with that. You could decide you're going to use some Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade action, and you're only just going to use your one attack around, but now you've got heavy armor to do it with. That's okay too, you know? And I think that it really just means that the amount of ways you can play your character start to really open up. Because you have the Cleric spells available, and you have the Sorcerer spells available. You have, you know, the armor options available now. You've got so many different ways you can do things. It just makes for this really fun, versatile type of play where you just kind of get to pick and choose how you're going to play your character on any given round. You can be a support guy. You can be a healing guy. You can be an offensive damage dealer. You can be like a crowd control type of character, and you can do it all while, you know, wearing whatever type of armor you want. And I think it's really solid. There are some liabilities and drawbacks though. Number one, obviously, if you're casting spells, Charisma is going to be your main stat for a Sorcerer, and Wisdom is your main stat for a Cleric. That's not great. If you're wearing heavy armor, you're going to need a bunch of strength. You might still want some Constitution. You know, you can't really dump strength on this character if you're wearing heavy armor. You can dump Dex. That works, right? But, you know, you're still probably going to want some decent Wisdom. You might dump Int. Who knows? I mean, you're going to have at least 13 Wisdom to multi-class in or out of Cleric, right? But I don't think you need to have a ton of Wisdom. And because you're going to be able to cast a lot of your heals and stuff as a Sorcerer and get the Charisma bonus instead of your Wisdom bonus, I think that you could get by with only 13 or 14, honestly. So it's not as multiple attribute dependent as it might originally appear. You could dump Dex, you could dump Int, you could have, you know, like enough strength to wear your armor and enough Wisdom to multi-class in or out of Cleric, and really just focus most of your ability score increases on your Charisma, and, you know, maybe taking some different feats, right? So, as for feat choices and racial choices, something I usually talk about, I think that obviously Variant Human is always a good choice, right? Obviously, anything that bumps your Charisma up is going to be a really solid choice. So, like, Half Elf, of course, is one of the most preeminent choices you can make on Charisma casters, right? And it's going to be especially good in this case, where maybe you do need some strength, and maybe you do need some Wisdom as well. You can have the +2 to Charisma, and then +1 to 2 different stats of your choice. You can put them into those, and you're probably going to be fairly set. I also think Tiefling is a really good choice, especially if your Dungeon Master allows you to use the choices from Mordenkainen's, like with the alternate bloodlines. You can start choosing things that give you different Wisdom bonuses instead of Int bonuses, or you can choose a Con bonus instead if that's what you wanted. You can choose a Strength bonus if you want, like Zariel, I think it's Strength, you know? And so it starts giving you a lot more customization. They do change your spell list, but that's not necessarily a bad thing too. Maybe you want a different bloodline just for a different spell list. you know, nothing wrong with that too. So I do feel like there's a lot of variety and a lot of options on how to play this character, and you're not just delaying your spellcasting progression much. A lot of my multi-class builds will be like 6 or 7 levels of Paladin combined with like all the rest, like Warlock or Sorcerer or even Bard or whatever else, right? And you're looking at like really deep multi-classes into 2 different classes, and that really means that you need like a mid-level campaign before you really start to come into your own and start to really shine, you know? Not that they can't shine at low levels too, right? But just saying that the longer those campaigns go on, the better these like high-level multi-classes with multiple like levels in each really start to do. This one, like I said, you could take 1 level of Life Cleric. You could take 2 or 3 if you wanted as well. But 1 level might be good enough. Even 3 will still give you 9th level spells if your campaign goes all the way to 20, right? You can still get anything there. And so it's not much of an investment, and I feel like the rewards are substantial. So that's everything I have on this particular video. I'm actually on vacation this week, so I'm hoping to get another video out in the next few days as well. And that one I'm probably going to take another look at Life Domain Cleric. We're probably going to look at combining it with Druid, and we'll look at some of the different Druid options and whatnot in that video. But like I said, originally it was all going to be one video. I actually tried that, but I just didn't like the way it worked. Then I tried reshooting it, and my daughter was crying. Her grandparents are here right now, so they've been like kind of helping to take care of her. But she's sick today, so you know that's not great. So she needed some daddy love. Then I started re-recording it again. Or actually, I tried recording it again, finished it, realized I'd forgotten to hit the record button, which was really the most important part of the recording process, of course. So here we are on take 4, and this is when I decided, I was like, you know what, we're just going to do Cleric Sorcerer today. We'll do the other ones on other occasions. I'm not going to do like 5 videos of Life Cleric all in a row or anything, but I will do like the Life Cleric and the Druid. I think will probably be the next day or two that I come out with that. And, you know, so that'll be something to look forward to, hopefully. There's some real strong synergy between them two, but one obvious problem, which I'm sure people will point out if I don't mention it right now, is that your heavy armor proficiency doesn't really help the Druid much if you can't wear metal armor or use metal shields. But that's okay. We'll talk about that in the video. I didn't go over feat choices. Usually Resilient Con is one I recommend a lot, but you're not going to need that on this because you already have Constitution saving throws. You might want Resilient Wisdom instead, especially if you have an odd number, like maybe you just started your character, you had 13 Wisdom just so you can multi-class in or out of Cleric. Then your first couple ASIs you cap out on your Charisma, and then you're like, you know what? I've got tons of armor, I'm not getting hit that much. I have Favor of the Gods if I do get hit, so I'm not really losing concentration. You know, I don't know if I need Warcaster. I think I just want Resilient Wisdom. Because Wisdom saves can be pretty crippling when you miss them. You know, it's usually you getting like frightened or feared, or you getting mind controlled, or, you know, stunned and hypnotized, or a million and one other things. It's usually not great. So that's a good feat to consider. Lucky, of course, always a strong feat. Observant, again, if you had the odd wisdom score and you needed a +1 wisdom, not bad. I'd probably favor the resilient wisdom though between the two, but that's up to you, I guess. Alert, if I'm going to be playing more of a battlefield controller type, but I don't know that alert's as important unless I'm going to be playing that type of role. If I'm going to be, you know, using a lot of crowd control type abilities, alert's usually a really strong choice. Especially as I might have dumped my decks, my initiative could really suck. But, you know, whatever. That's not necessarily the end of the world either. You might want to consider something like Heavy Armor Mastery. If you're wearing Heavy Armor from, like, let's say you took 1 level Sorcerer, and then you went immediately... Oh, I think you have to have Heavy Armor in order to take the feat. So it would be a feat you'd have to pick up later. You wouldn't be able to take it at level 1 with a Variant Human. But still not a bad option, though. Again, if you had odd strength, it's even more compelling. So, you know, there is that. But yeah, that's basically everything I have. So feel free to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all that kind of stuff. And as always, most importantly, leave me your comments in the comment section. that's my favorite thing about having a YouTube channel. I love reading everybody's input and their thoughts and their ideas and their video suggestions. So it's nice to start seeing this like little tiny community here on my corner of YouTube starting to grow and get a little bit bigger. And you know, that's been fun. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for everything.